Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of PharSide Pholios. I am your host, Monica Leek, and we're excited about this Multiplying May, a month of celebration as we celebrate and highlight authors during this literary month themes of getting caught reading, and it's actually Short Story Month. So we've got some amazing author interviews that we've had this month. And if you haven't had a chance to catch some of those interviews, definitely check us out on our Facebook page, PharSide Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page, to check out those past interviews. And today's special guest is author Deborah Jarvis, and she's been writing for a long while and has been an advocate for all things Greyhound for slightly a little bit less time than that. And she teaches high school and college literature and writing and lives in New Hampshire with her husband, Rob, and her son, Will, 2 greyhounds and 4 cats. Her daughter, Rosalind, lives nearby. And the Crystal Pond, which we'll be talking about today, is the first book in the Carolithian Chronicles to date. And so she's working on another exciting project, which we will hopefully get some insight on maybe a little later. So welcome to the Far Side, Deborah Jarvis.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. So we are excited to talk to you today about the Crystal Pond. What was it about the genre of fantasy that you connected to and decided, okay, this is what, I want to go into versus, mystery and romance and comedy and chick lit and all the in-betweens?
I don't know. I think it was just what I was reading when I was a kid. I loved the Chronicles of Narnia. Got very much into The Last Unicorn. That remains my favorite book, I think, of all times. And just found that particular genre really appealed to me with the various things that it can do and the various things that authors do with it.
You make mention in the intro of your book that the best books and films in the fantasy genre were made in the 80s.
I definitely
agree with you on that. So what is one of those movies that you would go back to and watch again now?
Actually, I used Lady Hawk in my Heroes and Villains class. That's absolutely one of my favorites. And one of the characters in the Crystal Pond, the horse Vexanius, who's early on, you meet him in the story. He's kind of based on the idea of Goliath, with that idea of the Frisian horse. I was always very taken with that animal, and kind of modeled Vexanius on him.
Now, Crystal Pond is book one of the Carolithian Chronicles. You self-published this like kind of mid-pandemic. So how did that impact your writing process or shape your approach?
So the Crystal Pond was something that I've been working on for a long, long time. And originally it was one book that we've now broken into the first and second book. So the first one, it was originally titled The Ivory Queen, and we found that it was too long to publish as one book. And so I had talked with a friend of mine, and he's like, well, you've got The Ivory Queen, what's the other one about? And I said, well, it's kind of coming in, and you have her being this character whose life is being kind of controlled for her. And he's like, well, what about the Crystal Pond? You could do that. And I said, oh, that'd be really cool. So we've kind of taken that and been evolving with the storyline through there. So when it came to the time for the pandemic, I had written the book quite a while ago, and I just had been busy with life, and all of a sudden it wasn't as busy. And a friend of mine and I, who we like to talk about writing a lot, she's like, why don't I help you edit? And we'll sit down and we'll work our way through this. And so we did that in the early parts of the pandemic in that first summer, and then worked through the story and kind of beat it into shape, and then came out where we are with it today.
And you talk about editing, with a friend, a colleague. How is that process? How does that process work, or has that process worked for you? Having someone who knows your work and knows you personally to look at your work.
It works really well. And I think if people could do these partnerships, because I'm working on one of her stories and helping edit one of her stories now. So I think these kind of partnerships where the two of you give each other feedback and help each other, I think it strengthens it. And she knows that she can say things to me, and I'm not gonna bristle. I'm not gonna get upset with her. Although I did a little bit in the beginning, but I learned that she absolutely was right, and I needed to listen to her more. So it definitely became one of those partnerships where I would listen to what she said. She would make comments. We'd go back through. We'd discuss them, and then come to an agreement on some of the points where it needed to be stronger or what we needed to do with it more.
The open line of Chris Pond said, "Whoever thought it would come to this," gives us a sense of something not being in the state or condition that it once was. So,
Mhm.
how does that beginning with a question shape the story and prepare the reader for what is going to be revealed?
So the question is being said by Count Nerfall, who has discovered, that he has a daughter that he never knew about, and her existence had been revealed to him by a mysterious figure who came to visit him at his keep. His own, legitimate daughter that he'd known about had been killed rather suddenly, and they found themselves in need of someone who was of that bloodline. And the main character Deirdre's existence became known to him by this particular stranger. So I don't think that Nerfall ever felt that he would be in a position where he'd have to go through the gate to go and meet this daughter that he didn't know he had by the lover on this world,
Mhm.
and have to go and meet her and see if he could convince her to come back here or back to his world to help.
So this book deals with like a number of different issues. You have like kind of a challenge of discerning good and evil based on what you were taught, making connections and understanding family relationships,
Mhm.
kind of the dynamics of coming of age. What is, one of those key themes or lessons that you see um, in the book that struck a chord with you as a writer?
So I think, and I've talked with this a lot about with my friend that we edit with, one of the things that comes up again and again as a theme in this book is acceptance of others, and not immediately jumping to conclusions when you're presented with evidence. It's like, take a look at it, see who this person is, not based on a stereotype, or not based on what you've been told previously, and be able to really get to know the person rather than preconceived notions. And I think that's an important lesson to take away in regular life too.
And so you speak of like your main character, Nefal, and the daughter that he didn't know he had. Um, how does that dynamic present itself as a challenge or even an opportunity as the story kind of unfolds?
So Deirdre is more of the main character, but you do
Mhm.
meet Nerfall first.
Mhm.
And I think, it certainly is a place where they have to trust each other, where he has to accept the fact that she might be the only person who can do this, just based on the fact that she has the right bloodline. And there's nobody else in that position who can do it. So there has to be that sense of trust. And it's one of those things where both of them have to take, some leaps of faith in order
Mhm.
to really be able to see, okay, are we going to be able to work with each other? Are we going to be able to trust each other? It's a little bit awkward in the beginning.
So, without giving the story away, what's kind of the premise of the Crystal Pawn?
So without giving the whole story away, the premise is that Nerfall has to go and bring his daughter Deirdre into his world. That bloodline that we've been speaking about has to do with her ability to be able to call the dragons, because the dragons have gone far enough away. The bloodline that she has, that he shares with her, it can only go through the female of the line, hence why his daughter was important, is the one who died, and she's the only one who can do this. The problem is they're not really sure how this is accomplished. It's one of those things. So we knew about it 300 years ago, but that's kind of been lost in the mists of time. We just know that it has to be this bloodline, and there has to be a connection to the dragons. So she kind of has to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what she has to do, and kind of strike out on her own with the help of a few key figures to be able to actually solve the mystery and unravel what it is that she has to do in order to get there.
Well, we'd like to say thank you to those who are watching us live. This is Monica Leek, your host of PharSide Pholios, along with author Deborah Jarvis, and we are talking about book one in the Crystal Pond in her Lithian series. And she has just given us some clues or set up the story for us. So you definitely want to go and check out book one, so that once you've read book one, then we'll lead into book two. So what is the title of book two?
So book two is The Ivory Queen. That just came out in April, so it is out now. And that takes the story a little bit further, and it kind of kicks it into a little bit higher gear. The first story is a little bit lower key. It's a lot of introduction. It's a lot of information where they're learning about what needs to be done. Deirdre's figuring out what's going on. But book two definitely moves things further along the process, and we do get to the dragons in book two.
Okay, so what is like a key lesson that, or thought or reflection that you expect readers to take away, or what is something that you want your readers to think about when they walk away from book one?
Walking away from book one, I think, realizing that sometimes the quest takes a lot longer than you think it's going to. Sometimes things are more complicated than they originally appear. The whole premise was, we're just going to call, a dragon to come up and talk to you, and we'll get them up here and that'll be fine. And that ends up not being the case. So sometimes I think having to work for what you really, really are looking to do or to be able to achieve, that effort is worth the end results, and what they always say, the journey is more important sometimes than the end.
So with having a background in teaching high school and college literature and writing, what was the impetus for your own writing? What sparked your own journey? Tell us a little bit about your writing journey.
So the idea for Carelessness was something that came up when I was a teenager, actually. And the story slowly evolved over time. I think it finally hit on a set point sometime in the 90s, early 90s. And then everything just kind of stopped because I ended up going into the teaching journey that I've been on, and really didn't get all that much further progress until probably, the early 2000s. And then it's just slowly been working its way. And it wasn't until, as we said, before the pandemic that there was really the time to put towards doing the publication. So the storyline has been going on for a while. There's been other projects that I've been working on, but that particular storyline has taken a while to come to fruition.
So is writing something that you'd always desired or saw yourself doing? Even to the point of publication, or was it something you saw yourself doing on the side as a hobby?
No, it's something that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to get it published. I always wanted to get my works out there. And again, it's that background in literature. It's like I know what good literature looks like. I know how it should be structured. And I do read a lot of more modern literature that's pretty popular nowadays, and I do try to keep abreast of that. Just to kind of see what is out there, what can I improve on, what can I do better.
What are some of the themes that you connect to as a reader, and what are some themes that you're interested in exploring, further as a writer?
So themes that I connect to as a reader definitely have to do with, I don't know, things that are undiscovered or things that need to be found. I'm very fond of the books by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. My father and I read those rather frequently together. And a lot of those have to do with things in the real world that they're looking at a little differently and then kind of twisting. So one of the ones they came out with had to do with the Donner Party. Another one had to do with museum murders that had occurred in New York City. And the underground population of New York City. So taking a look at real events and real things and putting them into practice. One of the other projects I'm working on, we do that a lot. So that's something I want to work with further. One of the other projects is set in modern and past. So there's been a lot of work on reviewing history and understanding some topics that I hadn't delved into before.
And since you have this kind of wealth of background with teaching the process and then the writing process, and then finding yourself in the process of writing and publishing, what was the publishing side of the work of getting to publication like for you?
That I think I know other people who agree with this. The putting it together for publication is actually harder than writing it. I think that there's a lot of technical work that you don't expect, even just putting it up on Amazon or going through Ingram, making sure that the cover is the right size, that the font is right, that all of the little pieces with the margins and the center gutter of the book, all of those things have to be very precisely done. And that is more technical than I'm used to. So that's the hard part, I think, with the publication, is making sure everything, all the ducks are in a row so that it can go in smoothly and you don't have problems.
So for those who may be watching live or coming back to watch the replay and they're thinking about writing, they're thinking about this story that they've had on the shelf or in a notebook or in a journal, what are some golden nuggets of wisdom as a published author that you can give those who are in that process?
Basically, don't give up. Definitely don't give up. Find some Facebook groups that have really good information. I think probably Wide for the Win on Facebook is one of the best groups that I've joined. They really, really have a lot of good information, not just about writing, but about publication, about places to put your book, about how to get your book into bookstores and libraries. So they have a ton of good information there, a lot of resources. I know 20 Books to 50K is another one that has some really excellent information. So reading, checking out the Facebook groups, finding books and resources, reading websites, trying to get really good information is the best thing to do. Connect with other authors. I do that a lot. I talk with other authors, and get involved in the local writing communities on Facebook so you have people to talk to about these things.
So those are some great takeaways for budding authors. Definitely your local communities, your public library. I mean, I know some writing groups meet, local writing groups meet at the local branch of the library, or at a community center. So definitely make those connections. Do your research. And make those connections, because they're going to help you in the long run, because I think the writing journey is not a short sprint, so to speak. Definitely not a short sprint, but definitely one where you have to, find your pace, set your pace, and just, kind of go through, endure to the end, so to speak, till you reach that kind of that goal mark. I was at my nephew's state track meet this weekend, so that's what I guess the track metaphor is in my head. But definitely it is a process. It's a preparation and all of those kinds of things. And there are all of these pieces along the way. So thank you for sharing those nuggets with our live audience, as well as those who will be catching the replay. So what is something that you've learned about yourself through this process of writing to publishing?
I need to slow down sometimes and have more patience. especially with getting everything put together, because I thought, okay, we're done with the editing, everything's great, we've had the readers look at it, everything's good, we've checked it over, everything, and then it just sometimes things just slow down, and they're out of your control when they slow down, and you have to just be patient. That's the hardest part. So,
And
yeah.
and so you've gotten book 2 completed.
Mhm.
So is that the end of this particular series?
There is a third book that we know the plot of it. It's going to be worked on this summer. It's going to be a little bit darker, we know, than the first two. It kind of is getting a little bit heavier because of the way things end in book 2. It's going to take a little bit of a turn, and it's going to be, the first two books have all followed just Deirdre's character and her group, but because of the way the characters split off at the end of the second book, and that won't be too much of a reveal, I don't think. We're going to be following two different paths in book 3, and it'll be a little bit more complicated keeping all those parts juggled properly.
Okay, so we have book 1, The Crystal Pawn, book 2, The Ivory Queen,
Mhm.
and then there's a pending project of book 3 for our readers to follow. So if you have not picked up book 1, The Crystal Pawn, which is the one that we have been discussing today, we encourage you to pick that particular book up. And Deborah, you can tell us, our live viewers and those who will watch the replay, how that they can follow you and get this book into their hands.
So probably the best way, I mean, I'm on Facebook. You can definitely find me on Facebook. It's the Fantasy Worlds of Deborah Jarvis. You can find book 1 and you can find both books on Amazon, but because of issues right now with ISBN numbers and a little bit of a glitch, the paperback of book 2 is not available through them, so you'd have to get it through Barnes and Noble. And that's something that's happening to a lot of authors right now, so it's not just myself. It has to do with 978, or the 978 codes of the ISBN. And since the ISBN company, Bowker, is now sending out 979, there's been a little bit of a trip up with some of the numbering. So that's in the process of being resolved at Amazon right now. So you could find both of them at Barnes and Noble. You can find most of the parts at Amazon or through online distribution.
Okay, so remember to check her out. This is Deborah Jarvis, author of The Crystal Pawn, author of The Ivory Queen, which is book 2, and then book 3 is coming, so you definitely want to be on the lookout for that. You can also follow her on Facebook, and she has her website, deborahjarvis.com, and it's a beautiful website.
Thank you.
Very clean, very easy access to follow, and you're welcomed into the world of fantasy. Go right there, and it draws you the first page. You're drawn in through the first page. So definitely go check her out, get more information, and sign up to be on her email list. That way you can find out about things that she may be doing, or events she might be coming up, or any signings or readings that she may have going on in the area. Outside of the classroom, what are some other things with writing that you look forward to being able to do?
Well, pretty much every year I do the New York City Midnight Contest. That's a short story contest that kicks off in January. You can sign up starting in November. It's like $50 to do. And they assign you a genre, a character, and a theme. And you have to create a story with those parameters. So that's actually a really cool challenge. That's where some of the short stories on my webpage came from, or website. Was through the New York City Midnight Contest. It's a lot of fun. It's very stressful, The first one, you have a week to write it. The second one, you have three. The second round, you have 3 days to write something, and the third one is 24 hours. I don't do well with short stories. I like novel length things, but I do the challenge to kind of try and make myself do other genres and other types of stories. So I've made it through round one 3 times, I think, and I haven't made it past round two. It's just too short a period of time. It's always during the school year, so it makes it very hard to do. So I do like doing that. I do like the short story projects. I like working, as you said, with the kids on their stories a lot. And for my own writing, I've got a couple of other projects that we're working on, one of which I'm very excited about, called Forever Demand, and that's mentioned on the website too.
Okay, so definitely for those who are watching us live and those who will catch us on the replay, we want you to follow Deborah Jarvis on her website, all of her social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and she even has a TikTok. So you want to catch her on catch her on
Not a lot on it
TikTok.
yet, but we're getting there.
You're going to catch her on TikTok, and you're going to see more about this wonderful world that she's created through her writing, with her books. And so we're excited that she joined us on today for this time. Um, any um, any other words of wisdom for book clubs and those who are engaged in the writing process that you'd like to share? Or
I think just, don't dismiss indie writers. I think I see that a lot, where a lot of people are like, oh, it's not published traditionally, although that seems to be changing. It has been changing, but there are a lot of good indie writers out there. One of my favorites is Jonathan Durham, who wrote Winterset Hollow. Really fascinating person to talk to. He did an interview with me for my creative writing class I'm doing this summer, and just really excellent story if you like things that are a little bit darker in theme. So, don't dismiss the indie writers. There's a lot of excellent writers out there. That's kind of it.
amazing writers, indie writers across genres, and we're excited about having one of those amazing writers with us today on the far side, on PharSide Pholios with us, Miss Deborah Jarvis. So thank you so much for spending this time with us this afternoon, and we definitely wish you continued success with the Crystal Pawn, which is book 1 of the Carolithian series, and then book 2, The Ivory Queen, and book 3, which will be coming. So you definitely read those live viewers, our live viewers and replay family, definitely pick up book 1. It'll catch you from the beginning. You definitely it will draw you in. You'll want to see what happens in between the planes and make the connections. I'm going from one sphere to the other. And so definitely encourage you to pick up this book. And thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Very much so.
Miss Jarvis. So for those who are watching live or catching us by replay, make sure you're staying tuned to the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we close out our celebration in May with Get Caught Reading Month and Short Story Month. So let's get caught reading. Let's read some fantasy. Let's read some urban fiction. Okay, dive into sci-fi if that's your interest, but definitely pick up the Crystal Pawn today. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed. Have a great afternoon.